going to go ahead and replace our front wheel hub. It's located right behind your front wheel. Using our 22mm socket, let's loosen and remove our lug nuts. Go ahead and remove your wheel, set that aside. Go ahead and use a punch. You want to go into this little notch right here and open up this collapsed part of our spindle nut. Use a 35mm socket to remove our axle nut. Go ahead and spin that off. We're going to go ahead and remove our brake caliper and bracket. There are two 19mm bolts, one here, one down below. Let's go ahead and loosen and remove those. We're going to start with our bottom one first. We'll go to the top one. You want to be prepared. This unit will drop down. It is kind of heavy. You don't want to add additional pressure to this hose. So you want to hold this in place when you remove that bolt. You want to grab one of your hanging hooks here for your brake caliper. I'm going to go ahead and hang this. And use our strut spring to support this. Just go ahead and grab your brake rotor, separate that. On the back side of your knuckle here, there's going to be four 17mm bolts holding our wheel hub to the knuckle. There's two on this side here, and then there's two on the other side. Let's go ahead and loosen those bolts. So what we're going to do now that we have all four bolts broken free, I'm going to go ahead and loosen these. Now I don't want to remove them. I want to get them so that the studs themselves are just below the head here, or the flange. Probably about halfway inside. We're going to do this for all four. The purpose of this here is that when we go to remove our wheel hub, the four bolts will act as retainers so that the hub doesn't shoot off and hit you in the foot or worse. Now what we want to do, now that we have all four bolts loose, we want to go ahead and take this hub and we want to get it out of our knuckle. You can either whack on the back side of the flange here with a hammer and kind of work your way around, you know, go on to the other side and do that. You want to be wearing safety glasses when doing something like this, and ear protection, because hammering a piece of steel can get really loud. And another example or option you can do is take your socket here, put it on the bolt, and go ahead and hit that. What's going to happen is this bolt is going to push that hub out of our knuckle, and you're just going to work around to all four bolts working this out. The reason why you're using your socket to do this is that you don't want to damage the head of the bolt, because we'll be reusing those. So at this point here, our backing plate is loose. So we're going to go ahead and remove two bolts here. We're going to leave the two bolts on the other side. It's not particularly these bolts that have to get removed. You could remove the two bottom ones, the two top ones. I'm choosing to do these two because I'm going to continue hitting the hub on this side. Now our hub is pretty loose. We're going to go ahead and remove the two other bolts from the back side here. You'd remove those bolts and set those aside. With the four bolts removed, we're going to continue tapping on this here. And the hub should pop out. So we're able to work this out with our hammer. And as this slides out, it's going to probably come off with your backing plate. You want to just remember the orientation of this here, because on the front side is where your brake caliper is going to go. You go ahead and remove this as well. And on the inside of the knuckle here, there's a little bit of rust build up here, so you want to go ahead and clean this out. Use some fine sandpaper. I'm just going to go ahead and clean up the inside of this. Now you want to be careful because you do have an ABS speed sensor located on the top here. You don't want to nick, chip, or damage that in any fashion. Otherwise, you'll be replacing an ABS sensor. And you don't want to use spray chemicals in here either, at least on or around that sensor. So just sanding down some of the rust here. We're going to go ahead and blow that out. Go ahead and clean up your axle. Make sure the surface here is in good shape as well. Make sure there's no scaly rust built up on here, preventing your replacement wheel hub sitting flush on the knuckle. I'm going to apply some anti-seize compound to the splines here, and I'm going to also put a little bit on the inside of the knuckle itself. Being careful not to get it on the ABS sensor. Now that we're all cleaned up, we want to go ahead and install our backing plate and our wheel hub and bearing. Now you want to pay attention, the back side of this here has a magnetic pickup on it for our ABS sensor. You do not want to touch a screwdriver or any type of metal equipment to the back side of this. You can screw this up. So with that being said, line this up, slide your hub over the axle. We're going to install our bolts. We did run a wire wheel on our threads to clean them up. I'm going to apply some blue Loctite to these threads. Get all of our bolts plugged into the holes here, and then we'll go ahead and start catching the threads. I'm going to go ahead and get our bolts started here. Now I did just kind of rock that hub there to get those threads to line up. We got these two bolts started. I'm just going to go ahead and get the other two bolts on the other side started here, and then we'll go ahead and snug all four down. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tighten this one down, and I'm going to go to the opposite corner, and I'm going to snug this one down. We want to go ahead and pull this wheel hub in evenly. And coming back to this corner here. All right, once we have this bolt snug down and this bolt snug down, I'm going to do this upper one here and then the lower. This just ensures us that the hub is being pulled in nice and even. Let's go ahead and install our axle spindle nut. Just go ahead and snug down our axle nut. We don't want to make this super tight. We just want to pretty much bottom that out and make it tight. Let's get and torque down our wheel hub bolts to 72 foot-pounds. Now, there's no particular pattern to this here. You just want to tighten them all down. And then we'll get the other two. We'll go ahead and put some anti-seize compound on the face of our hub here. This will prevent our rotor from sticking. Now, when installing your rotor, you want to make sure that if you have the screws to hold the rotor in place, that you put the rotor in the correct position so you can reinstall your hardware here. If you don't have those screws, it is not critical to the operation of your brakes. Now let's go ahead and remove our caliper hanger here. I want to go ahead and install our caliper. So get this lined up. Slide this over and in place. And once we have that lined up, let's go ahead and get our upper bolt started. And once we get the start a few threads, we'll go ahead and get the bottom one started. Go ahead and snug those down. Let's go ahead and torque these down to 100 foot-pounds. I'm going to go ahead and install a couple lug nuts here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use the lug nuts here as a brace for our pry bar here. We're going to put this in here like that, and we're going to use the ground as leverage on the end here. Now we're going to go ahead and torque down this spindle nut here, or axle nut, to 242 foot-pounds. Now go ahead and remove our pry bar, and we'll remove our lug nuts. Now that we have our spindle nut torqued down, I'm going to go ahead and dimple the edge here right into that notch. So we're just going to use our little chisel tip. Just tap that in. Once that's dimpled in, that'll prevent that nut from coming back off, and you're all set. Go ahead and install your wheel. Go ahead and install your lug nuts. Once we get these installed, we're going to snug them up, and then we'll go ahead and torque them down. Let's go ahead and torque our lug nuts down to 95 foot-pounds.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.